ask you, Diana, where and how did our paths first cross?
I think probably through either Pam Slim or Desiree sharing something on Facebook. And then I followed the little bunny trail and saw you doing something with young men of color going to college or getting prepped for college. And I teach student success. So that was an interesting topic for me. I think that might have been the bunny trail, but it's been a couple of years.
Okay, then that is very well possible because I'm like, man, what is it? What is it? That is very well possible, whether it be my book or a speaking program that I was doing. So,
yep.
Okay, that's awesome. And yes, all roads lead to Pam Slim. All roads.
All roads.
I've been thinking about creating this little spider web of how I know people. It's all going to lead to Pam. So I figured, why even do it? Pam Slim, if you're listening, it all
we
leads
love
to
you.
We love you. And all roads lead to Pam Slim. I could so count the number of great people that she's connected me with. So that's just been +1 right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you. Let's see, who do we have here? We have Liz here. Liz, the way the show is going to be structured, the other folks here, Liz, and for whoever else is watching, the way the show is going to be structured, I have a couple of questions that I'm going to ask Diana. And I will be looking to your chat area here every so often to see if you have a question that you want to ask. An easy way for us not to get lost in the chat area is if you use /Q, it'll, instead of popping in our chat section, it'll pop in our question section. And that makes it much easier for us to find it and make sure you get your questions answered. So with that said, I'm going to kick it off, and you'll see very loose style. This is the only part where I'll get a little bit serious because I'm going to read my show opener. So I have that for our recording. We are recording. Let me say my how now, brown cow. All right. Ready to go? All right. Hey, this is Mike Ambassador Bruni, and I'd like to welcome you to another episode of No More Reasonable Doubt, a show focused on empowering young professionals of color. We help you to remove doubt, gain confidence, and have more impact at work. One important piece to making all this happen is getting exposure to different people and career paths. Today, our special guest is Dyana Valentine from DyanaValentine.com and creator of SuperConditions. Welcome.
SuperConditions.
Conditions. Ooh, thank you so much. SuperConditions. Let me say that again because we're going to edit that one. Today, our special guest is Dyana Valentine from DyanaValentine.com and creator of SuperConditions.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
Thank you. I'm glad that we connected a couple of days ago to say, hey, I'm around. And here we are. So I'm looking forward to learning more about your story, sharing it with the people. As I mentioned, this is really about young professionals of color and learning from professionals of color who have some different experiences. So I want them to listen to this interview and I want them to go, oh, snap, I didn't know that was possible. And oh, snap, I didn't know that was possible for someone who looks like me. That's why I'm in this. That's why I'm here. That's it. You are, we're probably going to be like on our 50th episode. And so just tons of beautiful wisdom, and I'm glad that you get a chance to add to that.
Thank you. Thank you. And, I think it's worth saying how this interview came about for someone watching this program because it fits right into your creed. It fits right into the No More Reasonable Doubt, I think, mission, because I saw a Facebook post of yours, and you know how the Facebook news feed is, you just don't even know what you're going to get or when you're going to get it.
Right.
But I saw something that said, hey, my guest, I can't find my guest today. Does anybody want to come on the show? And I said, yeah, me, I want to do it. And I clicked over and the show was already closed. But I wrote you a message saying, I'm in. What do you need? How can I support you? And that led to a little Facebook message. And 5 days later, here we are live.
Yes.
So show up. Say yes. I would love to help you. This is right in my bailiwick. I know exactly what I'm good at. I know what I like to do. And there was a silver platter waiting for me.
It is. That's exactly what I thought. Silver platter. Yeah. And to echo that message of and not even forget echo. You said it perfectly. but to say thank you for showing up and being there and allowing this to happen today.
Yep.
And I think we were saying before, we might have said, no, I think we caught it on recording. We were saying how we got connected, and all roads lead to Pam Slim.
Yes. Roads, paths, any form, even the crowded forest, you just go in there and Pam Slim is there.
Somehow, some way, or someone who knows Pam Slim is the way it ends up. But to kick us off, one of the first questions I like to ask is just, where are you originally from?
I grew up in Ohio. I was born in San Jose, California, and just within months was spirited back to my parents' home state, Ohio. And I'm so glad I grew up there. You know, it has helped me become who I am, and I'm a proud Midwesterner.
Excellent. Now, tell us more about what you do for work. We have you as, you are the person behind DyanaValentine.com.
Yep.
So tell us more about your work, what you do, and kind of what a day-to-day is like. I know that can be different.
It does. It changes every day. So my interest in sort of the core fundamental principle of my work is that by asking real questions, the real questions, not the wrong ones or not the right ones according to whomever you ask on a given day, but by asking the real questions, I think we can come up with systems that help us make more humane decisions. And to me, at the center of the capacity to lead and the capacity to make good decisions has to do with this idea of having enough of the right information associated with the real question to move forward. So that's my interest, is a discernment. I'm in the land of discernment.
Would you mind? So there is a young professional who's listening in, and they're going, please give me an example. Make this real for me. Give me a situation where I need to make a decision, and how you help.
Well, I can give you a personal example. At several different points in my career, I have been in a job. Let's say I've worked in corporate America, I've worked in academia, worked in a lot of different fields. And sometimes you get to that point where you're sitting at your desk or standing at your lectern or doing whatever it is you're doing, and you say, is this it? Is this my calling? Is this the right? Why do I have this pit in my stomach when I'm on my way to work? Something on paper, everything looks like it should be. And in my heart of hearts and in my cells, something is not right? Something's a little bit off, or I seem to be having a lot of misunderstandings, or maybe I'm misunderstanding my assignment here on the planet. So those are some of the questions that I have had in my life, and I have sometimes successfully addressed them and sometimes not so successfully addressed them, or just stuck with it and took those sort of old adages of, that's why they call it work, Dyana, just suck it up. And you have a job. You need to be thankful. You need to be grateful for everything you're given, and be a good student and be a good whatever, and fill in the blank there. And that can be really exhausting. So my suggestion, instead of is this all there is to look a little bit deeper inside of that. So if the real question, if the wrong question is this all there is? Because the wrong questions make us feel worse, right? That's how you know it's a wrong question, is if the question itself just weighs heavily on you. Mm-hmm. And the right question is, how do I be a good student, and how do I advance in this thing? But the real question is, can I trust myself and trust other people in this environment? Or how can I be more trustworthy in this environment? Or how can I build trust within my team? Those questions get to the real question for me. And that's where it gets interesting. And then I suggest that you do things like, obviously, the SuperConditions game will help you sort of build a little database of what you're really good at, about your own style of making decisions, that helps you then inform the system you put into place to become more trustworthy and to build trust among your team. So that's one example.
Talk to us more about SuperConditions.
Okay.
Tell us the story about how it came to be, and what is it?
Well, how it came to be is I have another website called wokeupknowing.com, and it's a dream website. So people ask me questions and I actually dream on it and talk to them about the symbolic language and how they can take their question and answer it for themselves in the world. So I was doing a dream session for a client, and this is a very successful, very ambitious young man. And while he was open and curious about the woke up knowing process, the dreams that I was delivering to him, he's like, none of that none of it resonates. I don't get it. Just answer my question, right? And I was really frustrated because, of course, I'm channeling the cosmos and I'm coming up with this imagery. And 98% of the time that I do this work, someone is blown away by the connections and they can immediately draw a link to the question that they have. So he was saying, nah, not that into it. No, I don't get it. And I was, turning red and I was frustrated. I said, it's as if you're not honoring your super conditions. And right, just on almost like a little teleprompter next to his face, we were in person, a little teleprompter said super conditions. And I said, it's like you're not honoring your super conditions. And he said, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I love that word. What is it? Tell me more. And I said, well, your conditions under which you are your best in the world. What are your super conditions? What drives you to do what you do in the way you do it? Not in the way someone else says you should do it, or not in the metrics of your income and your goals. I mean, inside of you that came with you onto the planet, what are those things that describe why you do what you do, how you do it in your own unique way, and what roles you play when you're being your best? And it literally, I cannot make this stuff up. I was reading a teleprompter, a cosmic God delivered teleprompter, and I was reading it and he was in. And so then we took that information, went back to the dreams, and we found the symbols that were relevant to him and continued the work. But that's how super conditions actually appeared before me. And I believe that I'm a vessel. So I take down information and try to translate it into humanese. And almost always I like to design games for people to connect. You and I have the conference connecting thing in common. So I made it into a process by which you could ask questions and play games and investigate yourself so that you could make better decisions.
Wow, that's great. That's the super conditions. There's something about when you said super conditions that, I don't know, I don't even think I have the words for it yet to describe kind of the words to describe the visual that kind of came to me, where it almost felt like someone is standing still. The vision I saw was someone on almost like a mountain, and then the background changed. That's what I saw. As soon as you said super conditions, that's what happened. It's like the background changed, and that made all the difference.
Yeah,
because this is where you do your work. This is where your magic happens, and that's what came up for me. So wow. Now let's take a step back.
Okay.
Where did you go to school?
Undergrad, I went to Brown University, and graduate school, I went to Antioch University.
And what did you study in those different places?
When I was at Brown, I studied women's studies and biology, and with a heavy emphasis actually on becoming a doctor. That was what my goal was in undergrad. And in graduate school, I studied applied community psychology, which is a relatively new school of psychology. It's about 30, 35 years old. And the field is really organized around how communities solve their own problems and amplify their own wellness. So it's really all about exactly what SuperConditions is about using what you already have to increase your access to resources, to reduce stress, and to increase competencies that you might need in order to navigate the world.
Now, when I hear the word applied, it makes me think of feet to street. It's something that is, you're not sitting back doing research, it almost feels like.
Not
at
for
least
me.
At that point, at least at that point in your life, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
For
was.
me, I think that you talk about it in your creed
Mhm.
when is it run the point? Run.
Run the point is one. Yep, take action from where you are with what you have.
Exactly. So you already got it.
Oh, okay. What so now so college is over, graduate school. Now, are you doing what you thought you would always be doing?
No. I decided when I was about 6 years old that I was going to be a doctor. And at that time, I thought I was going to be a child psychiatrist because I was, even at that tender age, I was always interested in why do people do things the way they do it, and why, how can we help the kids? We got to help the kids. I was a little baby, right? And I was like, how do we help the kids, mama? Like we got to do something about it. And so then as I went through high school and got to college, I was really good at science and math, and I played a lot of sports. And I knew that, like, for me, one of the sort of highest symbolic role you could have would be doctor, because you had a
Mm.
direct impact on somebody's life. So while I was in school, though, I met a lot of doctors. I did some biomedical research. I was a freakish savant at microsurgery. I worked in a research lab and I was really good at it. And my mentors really, really, really encouraged me to become a surgeon because they said they identified a kind of natural talent in me that I wouldn't have found out any other way, right? How are you going to find out you're naturally good at microsurgery, So I sort of thought, well, someone saw something in me, so I must then go do that. The only challenge was that a lot of the doctors who I was working with, not all the doctors I was working with, but a lot of the doctors I was working with, studying with, teaching these techniques that we were developing in the lab, they didn't seem that happy. I mean, they didn't seem like they were my kind of happy. Let me put it that way. And so after college, I was supposed to be studying for the MCATs, and I had my stack of books. I had my legal pads. At that time, it was legal pads, kids. And I was supposed to be spending 3 months getting ready for the MCAT. And those books all stayed beautifully sealed in their plastic wrappers. And I couldn't describe why I couldn't open those books, why I couldn't do it. So that started this sort of circuitous route of, I call it the escape pod method, when you don't want to do something and you get another invitation and you go do that, and then you're sort of absolved from that prior decision. So I started a little path of really fun adventures that led me away from medicine, and I didn't look back.
Okay. Tell us that's kind of that story, or the overview of the story from that point to where you are now.
Well, Mike, that's 20 something years of time. So let's see, what would the short and useful version be? Escape pod, realizing the silver platter method and the escape pod method were two things that I learned in that 20-year period. So
you got to tell us about the silver platter method.
Right. So I believe that there are these silver platters sort of floating around us at all times, and they may have myriad options on them. So, you might have chocolate, and you might have a shrimp wrapped in bacon, and you might have a job or an invitation to go visit another country because a friend of yours lives there and all you have to do is buy your plane ticket or something like that. I think that in our lives, we have these silver platters, and they look different for everyone. They're different flavors of things. They're different opportunities. And sometimes I believe when we're living life, I call it life above the eyebrows, when we are in that, I have made a list, this is what my major is in, and therefore my job will be in this, and now I have this position, and the 3 positions above my position are this, and this is how you move through the ladder, and all of those things. I call that life above the eyebrows. Like, I have a list, and I will now check it off even if my leg is bleeding and my child needs to go to a different preschool or something, So I believe that when I sort of came into my body, came into life below the eyebrows, started to understand that I am a very physical person. I'm a people, humans first kind of person. And I think you and I share that super condition of humans first. Or in your case, I would call it humans for the win, because I feel like you have a different kind of energy signature on your super conditions than I do. We all do. When I started to make decisions from how can I trust myself more, and how can I be of deeper service, my silver platter started to become more clear. So as I move from job to job, or escape pod to escape pod, or tried out different things, every time when I came back to the question of how can I be of deeper service to my community, or how can I solve a specific community problem that I share with my people, the decisions became much more clear and more fun. So each time I tried something new, it was closer and closer to who I am as a person, and certainly helped me shine a lot brighter.
One thing that I'm capturing is that you have, I guess we'll call it great phrases. I'm just jotting them down. We have the escape. It's more than phrases, but escape pod, silver platter, and we have the above the eyebrow, below the eyebrow. So now, getting to where you are now, did you go from that escape pod opportunity to being the oracle? Where did that come into play? Where did that? Because that seems like that's what ties us to, that's what ties us to everything else. Where did that? What's the story behind that discovery?
Well, in each transition, so even before I knew there was going to be a transition, so I'd be in a job that seemed fine, making great money, doing fine things. I knew how to do what I was doing, and I got great reviews, whatever that was, to a transition, let's say a career transition where the topic really changed dramatically. In almost every one of those, I had to be forced to make the change. I had to be so desperately uncomfortable that I could not do what I was doing anymore. And as much as I tried to get fired in certain situations, because I had a strategy, right? You get unemployment or you get a severance package depending on your employment agreement. Like, I had an idea, right? I couldn't get fired. And I knock on something now because I wouldn't like to get fired. But if I did, I would call it a cosmic escape pod and try to trust it. But so I had several of those extremely uncomfortable circumstances. One was a physical injury. So I played sports most of my life. I was at that time competing in a master's rowing club. I'd never rowed before, but as an adult, I took a class and then joined a master's club. And I was, in absolutely the best shape of my life, because rowing is no joke. And but I got hurt at work. So, and this was a job I was supposed to quit much farther in the past than it happened. And I had to be physically hobbled in order to stop myself and ask the question again, am I being of my highest service right now? Am I listening? Am I yielding to what I know is true? And am I being of service? And every answer was no. I wasn't working to my full capacity. I wasn't enjoying the people I was around. I felt like I was taking money from the devil. I mean, it was deep. It was deep. Mm-hmm. And I had this physical injury, and that was I'm telling you this story as an example of, for me, I have this super condition of this loyalty super condition that says, do what you say what you mean at all costs, right? Right. So on the yay side of that spectrum, which is when it's of service to me and service to others, that means I'm going to follow through on my word. I'm going to show up when I say I'm going to show up. On the nay side, it means that I stay in situations way longer than I need to. And I'm not the appointed martyr of the universe. So that's not my job, right. But it's a bad habit, and it's an acculturated, socialized habit from multiple generations of people in my life who've been of deep service to communities and really done things that were, painful to live through in a way. And so I saw that as sort of the highest version of that. So that has happened multiple times where I had to be forced or so exhausted or, do something that was sort of so epic that you just totally burnt out your core and had to rebuild from the inside. That's sort of the Phoenix move is kind of one of my favorites.
Okay.
Yeah, not so romantic to me now, but it was in many parts of my life. So that had to do with many parts of my journey. The other thing I would say for the young professionals is that one of the things that served me that I didn't realize was serving me until I could look back at a few cycles of it was trusting some patterns in myself that sort of no one knew about. So I've always had very vivid dreams since I was a little kid. And everybody's got some of these hidden talents or some of these things that are true for them. But I always had very cinematic, very vivid dreams. And I cheated on NaNoWriMo. Do you know what NaNoWriMo is? It's that National Novel Writing Month thing that happens every November.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Let's write 40,000 words, whatever the thing is. So a friend of mine said, we should do this together. This will be fun. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. And day one came and I'm not a fiction writer. Hello, no interest. But a friend asked me, so I did it. And it was on the end of another challenge and I felt like it would help me keep going,
Uh-huh.
So day one, I make up some crazy story about this guy named Forrest who lives in a small town and wrote all these characters. And it took me 3 hours to write 1,600 words. I almost died. I was late for work. It was crazy. And I thought, what have I done? What have I done? So day two comes and I'm sweating, right? Because no one is even paying attention except one friend, and she's doing her own thing.
Right.
I'm the stress and strain, right? So day two comes and I'm freaking out. And so I kind of wake up in the morning and I look to my right and look to my left like no one's watching. And I just transcribed my dream. And of course, 1,500 words came in less than 15 minutes. I was done at work early, no big deal, right?
Yeah.
So I kept cheating on NaNoWriMo, and by the end of it, I had like 30,000 dream words.
Wow.
Well, I think what happens when we sort of pattern and listen to those inner voices that are, I think dreams are in your subconscious and therefore sometimes not remembered for a reason. I think your brain is busy doing stuff and it's housekeeping and we're not really supposed to mess around in them, which is why I don't do dream interpretation. But as I started to write them down and pay attention to them, of course, I remembered more of them and wrote more and wrote more. And I think that then that sort of educated my intuition to let my inner brain know that I was paying attention. So if you have the urge to play more rugby, or you have the urge to, why do I want to go to the barbershop every Saturday? I don't need to get my hair cut every Saturday, but I just love being there. Go there. Mm-hmm. If you find yourself curious about someone at work who's not even in your department, but every time you pass by them, they seem kind of interesting and they're up to something, invite them to lunch. Follow those little hints. Mm-hmm. Because again, you never know when that silver platter is going to go by. You got to show up for it and be awake. So whatever wakes you up, it's for everybody. It's not going to be writing down your dreams, but it's one way to let your subconscious know, hey, I'm paying attention if you have something to tell me. Was that too long of an answer? Does that make sense?
It makes sense for me because there's this context, and sorry audience, but pretty much everything that I listen to, it's being filtered through me, right? It's being filtered through me, as hopefully it is for you audience. And what it makes me think of is intuition, Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call it, but something that it shows up more when it knows that you actually listen to it. Like you're more in tune to it. So go with it, trust it, don't question it as much. So it makes perfect sense to me. And I think it's a great place for people to explore, to say, hey, what is that? What is that urge? What is that curiosity? And kind of see what's there. So I think that one of the questions I usually ask is, hey, what advice would you give to a young professional who aspires to do what what you do? How would you answer that?
Well, first of all, I would love to have more young professionals, even questioning questions, even thinking about doing more intuitive work or allowing their intuition to be voiced and to practice that, which is what I consider my work, is that I see a problem that I have and I try to solve it. And when I find a solution that really works for me, I package it and share it. I mean, that's my whole the fundamental principle of who I am and what I do. This is I call it to me, from me, but for us. That's my driving principle. So I really,
one second,
yeah.
Diana. I'm going to ask you to repeat that because
Okay.
I think there's gold there that could easily be missed.
Okay. So the way that I work is that I have a bunch of problems. I have a bunch of stuff I'm not good at. I have a bunch of things that I think if I did better or could solve for myself, that would directly serve my community, because I tend to hang out with people who share the same values and are interested in the same things. So when I have something, so for instance, my Pitch Perfect product, that's a product that helps you answer the question, what do you do when you're at a mixer or a conference or whatever? And everybody gets all bent out of shape and they give 20 different answers on any given day. So I too, even though I'm a very loquacious person, I would not be able to talk my way out of a paper bag. I would be nervous and sweaty. And so I decided that I needed to create it in a way that was fun, because I have to have fun when I'm solving problems. If I'm serious with a spreadsheet, I just give up. So I made a game called Pitch Perfect, where you can actually cultivate multiple pitches for yourself until you find the one that resonates and fits with you. That was for me. That was for me to make my life better and to try to be a responsible professional adult and help people give me money. That was for me. However, at that time, all of the clients I had and all of my friends also were struggling with the same thing. I think it's a very common thing for people to struggle with. And so I made the game and I gave it to people. So I call that's sort of one of my fundamental operating principles, called to me, from me, for us. And that's awesome. A super condition of mine that has always been true for my whole life. I mean, since I was a little kid, there are examples through my whole life of things that I figured out and then taught to other people.
Now that might go right into the next question.
Okay.
And that is, what I make up that, there are certain things that only time teaches you.
Only time can teach you?
Only time teaches you. No one could have said, hey, check this out. And even if they did, if you weren't ready for it, you wouldn't necessarily receive it.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious about, what has time taught you in kind of your career? What kind of aha moment that you've learned in your career?
There are a lot of them. I think the one that I hold to be true and close to my heart right now. I've just come through a couple of years of just really hard times, deaths in the family, stuff like that, where I just felt really low and I felt like I was just not at my best, and I couldn't get it up, I just couldn't. And one of the things that came out of that experience is that I have a completely new range of compassion available for other people, for myself, because we just sincerely do not have any idea what someone else is going through. So that little delivery, like you were saying earlier, I hear things through my own filter. That little delivery of whatever experience you have with someone else, whether it's a disagreement or an admiration of, oh my gosh, they're doing it exactly the way I want to do it. That not covetous in the way that we don't want them to have it, but you know what I mean? That like drawn into their story experience we have is such a small slice of who we are and what we're capable of. So that helped me directly start to have totally different reactions to experiences around me. So for instance, and the same thing goes for, we don't know what drama they're going through, but also we have no idea what their goal is. We don't really get a lot from other people about what drives them and what they're really passionate about and what they're good at. So that changed one very important way I interact with people. And I highly recommend that everybody on the show try it. And that is asking more interesting questions when you meet people or interact with people. So for instance, instead of, hi, how are you? What do you do? What car do you drive? Where do you live? Where are you from? I go right into, what is the best thing that happened to you this week and why? And it doesn't have to relate to work. It doesn't have to relate to what you're doing. It's you immediately, people just go, and they might not tell you what they're thinking. They might edit it for the situation or whatever, but you can see in them, their energy immediately changes and they are like open. They're receptive. And then you have an invitation to really be with that person versus being with their statistics, their job title, their whatever. So that's a big one for me.
See, but they haven't practiced that pitch. They don't have a pitch for that.
You don't even need a pitch. You don't even need a pitch. You just need a real question, a human to human question.
There you go.
Do you have any pets? Tell me about them. I guarantee you that somebody who has a pet cannot wait to tell you about their pet parakeet and how cute they are and they take a bath in their hands or whatever. I mean, I have no idea. You know, like when you see those little videos of bird baths and somebody wants to tell that story.
This is true. Well, it's like me now and my son Emerson.
Oh, who's gorgeous.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Ridiculous.
Who is like 20 months old at the time of this recording. And, you know, he's such a huge part of my life that if someone says, it's a shift. If someone said before, talked about kids, I was always curious about what their kids were doing because I'm just curious about stages of human beings. Like, what are they doing now? Oh, they're doing that? Now, if you ask me about kids, oh my gosh, you know, I might pull out my phone. Look at Emerson. Look, he did this. And here's where he drives me crazy.
Right.
But yeah, so those questions, one question I love to ask people, or two questions I teach people during what ties mostly, well, it doesn't have to tie to networking, is one is asking people, what are you working on that you're most passionate about?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't say, what are you doing at work that you're most passionate about? It says, what are you working on that you're most passionate about? It might be building a bird bath for your parakeet.
Yeah.
You know? And then the second question tied to that is, well, what's your biggest challenge? Because that leads to service, an opportunity to be of service where sometimes people feel I have nothing to offer. There's no way I can help someone. You have those two questions. I think it gives you a window into who they be.
And you'll know who you're talking to if they can hack those questions, because those are not small questions, one. Two, having work in the first question immediately puts everybody on the defensive of how do I answer this so I'm a good student and a good worker. Right. And the second one is, are you available? And I would suggest people do this. Be available for the answer on the second question about passions for somebody to deflate or step back from you, right? So we want the lean in, easy questions as the warm up. Let's warm them up a little. Take them to dinner first, Mike, you know, a little bit. Give them an easy question to answer and then dive into those, because I think a lot of people are not living passionate lives. And I think that it doesn't make them not passionate people, but it can put people on the defensive sometimes. And I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying be considerate and be available to accept that distance when somebody goes and say, well, let me tell you one of mine. And then I'll circle back and ask you yours. And you can tell them something about how excited you are to be the organist in church because you've been practicing piano since you were 6 years old. And finally you get to play something in high glory and you're so excited. And it's this Sunday. And do you want to come? You know, you can just turn the energy up in a positive way. And I think volunteering answers to those questions before you ask them can set a stage for someone to lean in instead of lean out.
That's a great point. And I've experienced the lean out. early in my career where I was all gung ho and I asked someone, and around this time, what are your New Year's resolution? I had this guy look at me. And I probably even used that word New Year's resolution. I probably
Right.
used a longer phrase that said, hey, what are you excited about for this year? And the guy turned and looked at me. And I don't know if it's because we're in the gym and, he just got the shower. I don't know if that was why.
Could have been part of it.
And this was actually like, I used to report to this guy, but I thought, at his level, I thought everyone had these things and, they were moving and shaking, but there's two parts to it. A is that maybe yes, maybe no. B is that maybe it's not for you to know, Mike. Like, right? It's not the thing that I share with you.
Right.
So,
well, I used to be like you. I used to kind of look forward to the lean out because, as my, my immature instigator. Right now I'm a mature instigator, I hope, or at least aspiring to be. But in my immature instigation stage, or even feeling insecure, it was a sort of maybe an unintended domination technique to like make people feel like a little sweaty when they're around me, like, oh, she asks the hard questions kind of thing, because I thought that was a good thing. And I think that's true for people at different stages of development. You're taking a risk, you're trying something out, but I think definitely don't ask a question you're not prepared to answer, for sure. And feel free to practice those before you put yourself in that position, because that can be interesting too.
Tell us more about the mature instigator.
Well, I was introduced from stage by someone who was introducing me to come speak, who called me an instigator, and she gave examples of how I had instigated change in her life. By the way, I didn't know those stories and she hadn't prepared me for it. So I'm standing off stage, mic'd up, ready to go. And she starts, usually it's a very dry introduction. Dyana Valentine, blah, 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 whatever those things are. And it doesn't add any value and nobody knows what you're talking about, and they don't know. They can't decide if they like you or not from 99% of introductions, which I think is a major failing. And I help people write their talks and introductions for that reason, because I think that is something that we could make the world better by doing better. So she starts telling a very personal story, which I was surprised by because she's a very reserved person. And she said, she called me an instigator. And in my ear, my family history ear, I had not heard instigator as a compliment in my life. It was almost always something that was like, why are you being such an instigator? Cut it out. Because I was always stirring stuff up, right? And I still do. I just do it in a little bit more sophisticated way, but also it is my social and spiritual responsibility to use my instigational powers to uplift my community rather than dominate, criticize, diagnose my community. And that's something that I had to learn over time. It helped tremendously that I got a master's degree in psychology, because I could get out of my own way and start to look at why I was always poking people in the eye and not a fun way. But when she called me an instigator, it reminded me of all the times I'd been called an instigator in a negative way. And I took a breath, and then I looked at her and I realized I had never seen her seem so relaxed. And I honestly had never seen her give such a nice compliment. And I thought, okay, wait a second, we're on to something. So instigator is one of those titles that someone else gave me that took me a long time to step forward into. Evangelist is another one that I really struggled with, because I felt like I really only had a very narrow idea of what an evangelist was. And I, did not feel qualified to that. I also didn't want to be misunderstood as being someone who had a particular spiritual or religious affiliation. So I was kind of confused by that. But when I looked up evangelist, it is celebrant of light. That's what it means. And when I looked at, I said, oh, I'm down. That's yes, but clearly, yes, that. And the third one is oracle. I would not have used that myself because I'm extremely respectful of cultural assignments and labels. shaman is one that I hear used a lot. And
Right.
I feel like if you are not, shamans don't ever call themselves a shaman. It's a social assignment. And so I was very cautious about the term oracle. I really had to do a lot of research. I did a lot of studying. And when I stepped forward into that title, it was a combination of an acknowledgement of what it is I'm actually doing. And the only cultural reference that I have for that really is oracular. And also an intention. I intend to be of deep service by accessing information that we normally don't talk about, don't investigate, and doing that in a space where we don't normally meet. So the only people I know who can wake up in the middle of the night and do something very complicated are parents, first of all. We don't usually have conversations in that soft, supple, receptive space of just going to sleep or just waking up. And I think that that's a missed opportunity. So I had to really get very clear on why I was using those terms and in service to what before I could stand in them fully. So I would just say to all the people watching, if you have been labeled, nicknamed, if you throughout your life have had names that you didn't like or that weren't used with a kind tongue, I would suggest you write some of those down and look at what the spectrum of what those names are saying about you, and whether or not there's a place in there where you can step forward in confidence and justified and contributory pride and live up to your assignments.
Thank you for that. There are two words come for me when I hear that. Ambassador, which I use as a middle name, not so Mike Ambassador Bruni.
Right.
And then more so the one that's the wrestle is activist.
Yes.
That's the word I wrestle with. Because I'm like, well, I have a very particular thought of what it means to be an activist. I make up what this is what it means to be an activist. My fist is up. There's a certain aggression. I make that up. But I do know that certain things move me. And I knew it since college. I remember sitting in college in my psych of media class, psych in the media class, and the professor explained how certain things work, and how they show people. And she said something, and then my automatic response was, "What can we do?" I raised my hand and said, "Well, what can we do?" And she looked at me and she says, "I knew you were going to ask that question." So there is this, I wouldn't use the word aggression, but there's a lack of patience for talk.
Right.
There's a lack of patience. I'm like,
well,
we can talk for a point, but then I'm like, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
What are we going to do? What I say my purpose is, which I don't talk about too much, is really to inspire greatness in others. And the way that I usually position it is I want my presence to inspire greatness. Meaning, I want you to hear me speaking, and I want you to go, that guy? I got to go. I can't sit here and listen. I got to go do something. Like, that's what I want. It's just like people doing stuff. Just because of a story, maybe they heard something I did, and they're like, "Oh, he did that? Oh, I didn't think about connecting that way. Well, I got what I need. I'm out. See ya." Like that. That spirit to me is that's the ultimate to me. And some of those things have come up because all I do is I live my life pretty much. Now I've broadened and I have more courage. But I used to just live my life and I lived a certain way, and people will come and say, you really touched me by doing X, Y, and Z. And for me, I'm just like, I'm just living my life, and certain things I feel are a principle that I decided to take on, not putting it on anyone else.
Right.
But, so learning to own that and take a stance for those things because it can be of service to other people. So.
It's really interesting. I just for maybe 5 or 10 minutes went and looked at your website.
Yes. Well,
And
my first question is like, which one?
the Ambassador Bruni site,
Okay.
but also the No More Reasonable Doubt. Yeah, I just to graze to see, just to see, because I hadn't looked in a long time, and so I wrote down a couple of things that I think were obvious super conditions, because in case we talked about it, I wanted to bring them up. But you're talking them. Everybody is. You talk them in what you do, right? Mm-hmm. So one point I want to make about the activist advocate. I always take notes when we're talking, so I'm doing that. The activist advocate, what can we do thing? What can we do is a super condition. That's a philosophy that drives why you do what you do the way you do it, right? So I think, first of all, that's one. But also, I would play with the word activist. I would put it into one of those anagram machines. I would look at advocate. I would look at these different things, but also add your own descriptor that helps people understand what you mean by it. So I'm a speaker, but I am a podium-free speaker. So that tells you who I am, what I'm about. And I also really love emceeing fundraising events. I love making the room sweat so much that they have to fan their shirts. That is my job. And it's most effective when there's a common goal that we're trying to reach, right? But when I was looking through your site, so I saw the Ambassador's Creed, which is all about super conditions. So that's run the point, wounded healer, humans for the win. And then the altruism or the reciprocity, it wasn't reciprocity, it was about giving, because it was intentionally not about reciprocity, was the give to give. I think that's a super condition.
Well, it is reciprocity. Reciprocity was the name, but it's as you were saying, it's the definition of it, of understanding that, hey, give because you can, and also understand that the place where the circle works is not always like 1-to-1. Right. That circle is huge, and all of a sudden something comes to you. Learn to accept. I graciously accept. Because it's part of that reciprocity. It's not like I'm not worthy or I can't do anything for you. No, the circle is much bigger than just the two of us. Yeah. And I think bow tie flow, I think that is underneath bow tie flow is a set of values that make up a philosophy of why you do what you do the way you do it. Underdog, but this is the one that I think ties to what you were just saying, which is, and you've called it a variety of things in different places of writing, because I read a couple blog posts and just kind of nosed around. I didn't really go too deep. But present tense legacy. So turning the meaning of the word legacy on its head. So it's not after you die in your obituary and whatever as a legacy. But this idea of right now, right here, what are we going to make happen that then lasts and generates more change for other people around us, that lifts other people up while we're getting our thing on? So that idea of you saying, I'm just doing my thing, then translates into this other thing, which I wrote down also, which is watch me and then do you. There's this way of I like that.
I'm going to do my thing. Now you do you, but
you don't have that. You don't have that copywritten or trademark.
No, that's yours. That's your super condition. I don't own anybody else's super conditions as much as that's all you. But what I'm saying is that as an undercurrent that drives what you do. So for instance, and this is a way that you can use super conditions, but you're already doing it. If you have an opportunity come to you, somebody asks you to do something, if you can't check off at least 3 of the super conditions that I've mentioned today, because it's your creed, I'm not making up new things, I'm just reflecting back to you maybe with a little bit of different words. If it doesn't check off at least 3 of those things, it's going to be a no. As sexy as it could be, the biggest price tag, whatever. If it's not resonating with who you are as a person, or if you find yourself, like I teach at a local community college and I teach student success. So I hear a lot of students stifling parts of themselves. So I'm a dancer, but I'm majoring in business because business majors get more jobs or whatever it is. Or, well, I believe in God, but I don't talk about it at work. Or, all these ways that we really try to like almost empower, compress, and stifle those incredible natural resources that we carry around with us because we got criticized at some point or because it wasn't safe. And I'm a big fan of being safe. So I'm not saying do things that will put yourself in danger, but I am saying that if you can find ways to articulate them so you can actually have a conversation and open those doors and see those silver platters, I believe the world will be a better place.
Thank you for that. I don't think my brain can get past watch me do you. That's it. I'm done. It's like my brain can't get past that. I'm sorry.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry. Thank you, silver platter. Thank you.
I have done my job here. And good night. Yeah.
Well, two last questions.
Okay.
One is any books that you would recommend for the people, maybe that have great impacts on your life. Okay.
So this is one that I really like, and this goes back to our conversation about trying to find ways to access the catalogs and archives of information that help us make better decisions. So since I am all about the discernment game, I have many books that I have used that talk about that. Blink by Malcolm Gladwell is a great one because sometimes we don't even know what's informing our decision to act. And if we're unaware of it, we're just as likely to have an accidental success as we are to screw something up in a major way that affects other people negatively. But on the positive side, The Committee of Sleep is by Deirdre Barrett, and I'll send you the information. And the subtitle is How Artists, Scientists, and Athletes Use Dreams for Creative Problem Solving and How You Can Too. And what I love about this book is it's not about dream interpretation or any kind of like covert way of talking about dreams. It's super direct stories of people, many of whom you might know or know in history, and about how they access their sort of subconscious work time and use that to make amazing things happen in the world. So I really love this. It's an easy read. You can flip to any page and read it. And I wanted to choose something that had a functional bent to it, but also that you could graze at a bookstore if you didn't want to buy the book. And, it's not some kind of like heavy required reading or else you can't be successful or something,
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And the last question is, where can the people connect with you? Do you have anything, the latest thing that you like to promote? It's time to brag about you and how the folks can connect with you.
Okay. I love bragging because it's true. So maybe it's not bragging if it's true. I don't know. DyanaValentine.com, Dyana Valentine, just like Valentine'sDay.com is where I hang out. And I am incredibly proud of myself for delivering the SuperConditions game, which is the only gateway into my work, really. I'm asking everybody to go through that portal to come and do deeper work with me. It's sliding scale. You can also give it as a gift. It's very important to me that my work be accessible. So if you are if this is a decision between groceries and this game, please accept the game for free from me because I want you to be able to eat, but I also want you to be able to move through the world in a way that makes sense and that honors your gifts and makes the world better.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share your wisdom with us. And I know that several young professionals are going to be moved by this message. So thank you for seeing the silver platter, taking the invitation, putting out your own, hey, I'm available.
Yeah.
And here we are. So I appreciate you, Dyana.
Thank you. And best of everything to you and your growing family. And I just love your work. And I'm so glad that you're on the planet doing it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Likewise. I will stop the recording.